Firstly, welcome. Hi, Chuck. How you doing, my friend? Is that a bird singing
Hey,
out
Andrew,
there?
how you doing, man?
Good and yourself. Can
Oh,
you see me okay? We got some connection issues there, Chuck, it appears. Are you there, Chuck? Chuck, I'm doing good.
well,
I'm
I'm
doing
out here.
well.
I'm just looking across the. Pardon?
It seems that your connection, okay, that seems better now. Your connection's getting there. I'm not sure what the deal is. Maybe, it's because you're out in Texas. You're so far out in the middle of the country. Now I see you better. Hello, Ian Fraser.
I can see you better too. Okay.
Okay, good. Chuck, welcome. Thanks so much for coming on.
You bet.
What you been up to these last few days, Chuck? Are you going stir crazy, much like myself?
Not bad. I've been sheltering in place, and I've been trying to get a project every day to do. So I'm cleaning off my students' 3D stuff and making sure I'm going in the direction. We're hanging in there. We're doing a lot of exercise, so that's good.
Okay. Well, Chuck, hey, I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks so much for making your Instagram debut here. I think you might enjoy this community. I really love it. There's some great coaches, great people on here. And Chuck, I wanted to run a few questions by you, if that's okay.
Sure.
Chuck, firstly, let's kind of stick to coaching, and anybody who's tuning in, please feel free to ask questions. I can see my screen from here, and so if you do happen to have questions, feel free to shout them out for Chuck. Chuck, the best ball striker you've ever seen?
Well, and I've told this story many times, but I had the chance to watch Ben Hogan hit balls for a couple of days, and he had total control of the ball. I've never seen anybody else control the ball like that. Although there have been some really good players. Tom Kite, when he was on, was a phenomenal ball striker. I mean, there's a lot of great ball strikers. I played golf with Mo Norman. Of course, he was a great ball striker as well. And so, but I think Ben Hogan had the most control of the ball of anybody I've seen.
Okay. I once had an opportunity. I was actually playing in a tournament in South Africa, and I unfortunately didn't ever get to see Ben Hogan hit, but I think I got pretty close to the next best thing. I was hitting balls on the range next to Nick Price, and eventually I had to quit hitting. He was making me feel so bad, and I told him so.
So you were distracting him from his ball striking, so he wanted you to quit it.
Apparently not. I couldn't do anything to distract him. I was trying though.
Well, I can't hardly believe that. I've played golf with you, and you're probably the second best ball striker I've ever seen.
Chuck, it's getting a little deep there. I can see it. It's getting a little deep. Chuck, okay, so let's get to like a serious instruction question, and I'm seeing a few questions coming through. When it comes to wedges, Chuck, when your players are hitting wedge shots, what are you looking for as far as trajectory, as far as the flight goes?
Yeah, I work with a lot of good players, competitive players, and I've done a lot of measuring of them on TrackMan and so on and so forth. And some of the common denominators we find with distance wedges is that the best wedge players all launch the ball under 30 degrees. So it's a low shot produces spin, which makes it easier to control your distance. We look for 150 to 1 RPMs of backspin per yard of carry. It's much newer regulation. As they get closer, when you're talking about pitch shots, then that number would go up. You'd see as many as 400 or 500 RPMs per yard of carry. And then I see, like up to 60 yards, I'll see total height be 40 feet or less.
Okay, yeah. I once did a little test, and we had a group of instructors hitting shots, and the objective was to hit pitch shots between a certain distance, but you had to keep the ball below 35 feet, and that was easy for us. And as soon as you had to hit the ball above 35 feet, it took us twice as many reps to reach our number. And so higher pitch shots, and this is what I've heard you say on a number of occasions, higher pitch shots typically have less spin, and they are harder to control.
Yes, absolutely. I think the only time you really, there are really 4 different ways of stopping the ball, right? So one is spin, one is height, one is friction, where if you're bouncing it into the slope short of the green or something like that, and then lack of inertia. In other words, you just don't hit it very hard and it stops. And so I think the only time you really need to use height to stop the ball would be if you're in the rough, where you can't use spin. The measurements that I've found, you're going to stop the ball faster with spin if you're an accomplished player than you will with height. And there's other situations where that takes spin off, like downwind to a firm green, where you might have to use height to stop the ball. But most of the players that I teach will use spin the majority of the time from a good lie.
That's a great point, Chuck. And I find that too often, not even better players, just regular everyday golfers, they see a front pin from 50 yards away and they go, oh, well, I need to hit this in there high. And all your testing, all my testing shows that let's stick with that one pretty much stock shot with our wedge and flight it in there low. Let's kick the spin rate up, keep the trajectory down so we can control it, and let it go skip, check. And that's really the way to go about it.
Yeah, I mean, we see even if it's pretty low and it takes a bounce, it still will stop quicker sometimes than a higher shot with less spin that rolls out.
That has been my experience too. It stops quicker and it's easier to control.
No question.
Okay. Chuck, another question for you. I don't know if have you had a chance to read Brandel Chambly's latest interview? I think it was with Alan Shupak. Did you read that?
I know you're trying to get me in trouble, but I'm ready for you.
No, not at all. Not at all. I know you got, well, Brandel's gone back and forth with everyone. I'm not big enough for him to go back and forth with me, but he's gone back and forth with you, which I think is a bit of an honor, really. A well-deserved honor. And, in this latest article, he says pretty much that golf instruction, modern day golf instruction, has been slapped around with the advent of social media. He uses a different term. He says it's been beaten up and exposed, so to speak. And I must say, reading the article, I fully agree. In that, I think back in the day, prior to social media, the sharing of information, of quality information, like you sharing that information on wedges and that, the only way people could find that out was to go and read your instructional book or get it in a magazine. Whereas today, if people log into this live session, they're going to be able to learn and take away a tremendous amount from you. And I know there's a ton of golf instructors that have logged in. And so the sharing of information is that much more free. And as a result, as a golf coach, and certainly there's a lot of golfers on here too, they are able to tell what's real and what's a little bit of hocus pocus. And I think in the past, there's been a tremendous amount of hocus pocus when it comes to golf instruction. And I see far less of that. You've got to be legit as a golf coach nowadays. You've got to know what you're talking about. And I'm thankful for more and more of that?
Well, I think, I think it still has to be the information I see. There's some good and some bad out there, and you have to be able to know something to be able to discern that. And I would say, you've got to go with a teacher's reputation for improving players, or for somebody that's done the testing and done the research, with the science, the background. I personally see, just to answer some of Brandon's points, I personally see that golf is being played at the highest level it's ever been played. The players are longer and straighter. They have to be straighter the length they're hitting the ball. In other words, to hit a fairway at 320, you have to be a lot straighter than you were at 280, which is where Nicklaus was. He was the leading driver on tour at 280. Now it's 320.
Yeah.
And to hit 60% of the fairways there is phenomenal feat. The player, and for all sorts of reasons. I mean, the players are more fit. They're
no doubt.
They're certainly, the equipment has made a big change, but they're better at everything. I think their swings are much more efficient than they were back in the day, and I know that I'll get skewered for that, but that's okay, because
that's okay.
I'm seeing a lot of good golf being played by so many different players. That's the thing that's amazing to me. They're better at every category. So they're better at putting. It used to be 50-50 make on tour was 6 feet. Now it's 9 feet almost.
Yeah.
And, they're just better at everything. A lot of it is thanks to Tiger Woods, because he raised the bar and everybody's stepping up.
Yeah. I'm going to say I agree with everything you've said. Obviously, human genetics are exactly the same as what they were back then. We don't have necessarily better athletes, but we have better conditioned athletes. We understand club fitting. We understand ball flight. We understand training. We understand, I'm going to say this, we understand teaching is so much better. And so everything that's going into making that player is so much more advanced. And as a result, we're getting more high-level, top-tier golfers.
No question.
Okay. Chuck, one of the questions that's come through that I would be interested in learning from you on in this, and I have decided, I don't think I've said this, this is the first in my series of what I'm calling lockdown learning sessions. Lockdown learning. I kind of like that, because we're all on lockdown. We're all going crazy. We're looking for some entertainment. How can we get better? And so a question from Dan Shepard is, what are some of your favorite drills for distance wedges? How do you get players to, what do you do with your golfers to help them do a better job with those wedges?
Well, in order to hit them low, you have to have a couple of things. But one is you have to have the face of the club has to be looking down after impact. Let's just put it this way, not looking up at impact. And so there really are two different ways to do that. You can do that by hooking the ball, the ones I've measured, about 85% of the tour players on distance wedges have the face close to the path.
Okay.
And on pitch shots, where they're inside of 30 yards, the face will be open to the path. So it's a totally different shot. But on distance wedges, so you're looking for two ways to get the face to look down. One is by closing the face by hooking the ball, or two is like Trevino did, where he just drags his wrist, gets his wrist bowed and drags it down the line and keeps the face looking down after impact that way. And so those are the things that I'm looking to accomplish. So with my players, a lot of the good players, I let them take it more inside on a distance wedge shot than another to try to get the path a little more to the right. That shallows out the angle of attack and gets the face close to the path, which produces that friction that you need to produce spin. So that's really what I look to do with that. And so some of the things, controlling the distance, Tom Kite was the best distance wedge player I ever knew. I mean, he had really good control of the ball with distance wedges. And the way he talked about it is he said, your golf swing is like driving a car that has 3 gears. So you have a first gear to go slowly, and you step on the gas until the RPMs get up, and then you shift into second and so forth into third. Yeah. And he said, in golf, first gear is the rotation of the body. It would be like putting or chipping, where you're not really using your arms and hands that much. And second gear would be body plus arms. So your body would turn to the back, and your back arm would fold. And as you come through, your body would turn forward, and your lead arm would fold. And then, of course, third gear is body plus arms plus wrist. And he said that he hit all of his distance wedge shots in second gear. And so this allowed him to be very aggressive and accelerate through the ball, as opposed to having a longer swing where he would have to decelerate. So that allowed him to hit it lower as well. So some of the things he did, he used to put a towel under his arms, and that would make him turn and fold and turn and fold in order to square the club face up. And those are a couple of good drills: hitting to towels, hitting to markers on the range.
Chuck, question for you. Just sorry to jump in right here. When Tom Kite, would you say that Tom Kite practiced, you said hitting to towels, did he have set distances that he liked to practice?
Well, what he did is he would have the towel set out from 40 to 80 yards in 10-yard increments.
Okay.
So his dad would be standing out there, and he would call a number. So he might call 60.
Yeah.
And then Tom would hit, and he would tell him how close he got. So he might say 58 or 63 or whatever it was. So every time he would hit, he would tell him the distance. And then back then, Dave Pelz had done a study and found that 50-50 in making putts was 6 feet. And so pass fail for Tom was always 2 yards. And so if his dad was funny, if he was out there and Tom hit it more than 2 yards from the hole, he'd just shake his head like that, and Tom would get all. Then if he made it, he'd just stick his thumb up and go, "Okay, that was good." But he never took a lot of credit for doing it. He thought he ought to do it every time. But that's the way Tom practiced, and obviously it helped him out a lot.
Okay, very cool, very cool. And guys, if you are watching, and I know there's quite a lot of people that have tuned in at the moment, please ask your questions. This is not just for me. It's not just for Chuck by any means. It's for everybody, and so please fire away with your question. Chuck, I'm going to ask you this. Let's take single-figure golfers, okay, single-figure handicap golfers. What would you say the biggest problem you see is amongst that better tier of golfers? Not necessarily tour players. What would you say the typical fault is amongst better golfers?
Well, I think there are stages of learning, stages of progression through your golf swing. And so I think beginning golfers start out just hitting the ball, and as a rule, they tend to slice the ball. And so I think that's sort of the first stage you go through as a golfer. And then as you learn to draw the ball, you reach the middle stage of golf. By learning to draw the ball gives you distance, allows you to be shallow enough to hit the longer clubs. Your contact is better, and so on and so forth. And then I think once you get past high school golf and you start to play college golf or tour golf, you have to reduce that hook into more of a straight ball. So you have to reduce the curve, so to speak, because you just can't afford to lose 2 balls around like you would if you had that. So I think what I see with most lower handicappers is that when you're drawing the ball, you have to be very careful that doesn't bleed into your chipping and pitching and your bunker play. And so where you're inside out and the face is closing through impact, you don't want that on a pitch shot, obviously. You hit in the heel and you'll won't have any spin. You won't be able to control the ball. So
bowling balls.
You'll be hitting bowling balls.
Okay, so what you're saying is for that better level golfer, you see players get their path too far to the right, and it tends to stay that way throughout the rest of their game.
Yes, I think that's they have to have a different swing for their short game than they do for their long game, and I think they can overdo that end to out too much as well. So I think those are good player problems, though. I find myself correcting too much hook and too much end to out and so forth as a good player's mistake, and particularly if it bleeds into the short game.
Okay. Chuck, one of the questions, unfortunately I didn't get to see who it came from, but thank you for it. One of the questions we've had posted is, what are your full swing fundamentals? When it comes to what are you looking for? If you were to pick three biggies, what would it be?
Well, Debbie Doniger, I don't know if you know Debbie's
I do.
Teacher from New York, came down to watch me teach, and she said, I'm going to summarize what you teach. She says, you like for it to be simple, so reduce the compensations as much as possible. You like to have the body first sequence as opposed to hand and an arm sequence first. And so what I like to see is I like to see the player control. I like to see the player's arms and hands be positioned in front of their body so that their elbows are in front of their body. I like to see the shaft halfway back pointing at the target line so it doesn't have to have a big reshift coming down in either direction. I like to see the left
halfway back, which is right about there.
Right about there. So I'd like to see you're right there, your left elbow in front of your body, not behind your body. I'd like to see your right wrist flat. I'd like to see the shaft pointing at the line. And what I've found is that if you get the club in that position, then you can control the club through the rotation of your body. If you get the club more upright than that, then you have to shallow. If you get the club flatter than that, you have to steepen. If you get the wrist more open than that, you have to close it coming down. If you get the arms behind you or away from you, not in front of you, then you have to put them in front of you as you come down. And so I like to, because I work with good players and I'm trying to get them to be as consistent as possible, those are the things that I look for.
Okay. And so it's pretty much with the backswing, correct me if I'm wrong on anything here, with the backswing, you're trying to get things fairly neutral so that the body can dictate on the way through. The body can lead on the way through. Exactly.
And most players, because the sequence of your swing should be lower body on out through the upper body, through the hands and arms out to the club.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Because the lower body leads, there's almost always some flattening, some dropping of the shaft. So you can't stay dead on plane and just rotate, although that's what Hogan said he felt like he did, even though he didn't. He felt like, it's interesting when you talk about flat players like Hogan, he always said the first move in the downswing is clearing the hips, very rotational. Yeah. And Jack, who was very upright, said, well, you want to drive your legs, which was a lot more lateral, in order to drop the club down the plane. But I feel like the plane is the boss of a lot of golf swings. I think most top players, when they're coming down, get within about 1.5 inches of the same slot. I don't see a lot of variation there.
I would agree. In that delivery position, they're all pretty similar.
Yes, absolutely. Everybody looks like Ben Hogan at some point in their swing.
All the good players.
Pardon?
All good players. Yeah.
Look like Ben Hogan at some point in their swing.
That's a great point. Chuck, and I've thankfully been able to spend quite a lot of time with you. You've participated in a number of the coach camp events that we've done, and we've done some other stuff together. And I must say that, amongst the many things you've shared with me, I love this as much as anything in that you said, as a golf coach, we're pretty much a neutralizer. You know, you think about that beginner golfer, they slice it. We're trying to get them to, you know, hit it less slicey. Okay. As that better tier golfer who struggles with the hook, we're trying to get them less hooky. And we're always trying to work golfers back to neutral. You know, we're always trying to work golfers back to neutral and just find that center of the road, that middle of the two options, the two ends of the spectrum, so to speak. And I like that. And I must say, I thanks to you, I use that a lot in my thinking. I've got to neutralize this player. That doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to try to zero out stuff with them. I'm going to try to get them less biased in what they're doing.
Well, that's what I would say. I think, in fact, most players are better being a little bit out of the intersection. In other words, being a little bit on the hooky side, or being a little bit on the, like, good players maybe being a little on the cutty side, just because the dead straight, zeroed out, nothing out can go either way. And so
Yeah.
I like to see that. I like to see people shaded on one side or the other.
Yeah, and just a nudge. You know, I remember last year, unfortunately, we're not going to have a heritage tournament this year, but I remember last year, I think it was, I stood on the range and there was a big storm coming in on Friday. And I was just watching players hit on the range, and the wind must have been blowing 25, okay, which is a lot. Wind was blowing 25 straight into the players on the range, and it was so cool to watch them hit, because I didn't see a lot of balls doing this, and I didn't see a lot of balls doing that, and certainly a head-on wind, a strong head-on wind, amplifies any shape. And there was tons of balls hit on that range that day that were just really straight. It was eye-opening to see how, yes, they may have a little bias on fade or draw, but they're very close to straight balls.
Yeah, and obviously there are outliers to all of that. You know, I mean,
Sure.
Bubba is the most obvious example, but you know, and Tiger likes to work the ball. I mean, it's not like he probably plays more fades off the tee than anything else, but he likes to work the ball to different pins and stuff like that. But for the most part, you see guys playing a shape and trying to fit that onto the golf course, and getting away from their shape only if they have to.
Chuck, just a quick question, because you're out on tour certainly more than I am. Would you say you see players hitting more fades or more draws? What's the split there, would you say, as their go-to, obviously?
Well, I see more players hitting fades.
Okay.
I think because of the fact that the ball goes farther and the players hit it farther, that they're looking to control the ball when it lands. And so they can do that better with the fade if they have enough speed. Now, you've got, I mean, again, the obvious outlier, like Rory McIlroy, as a rule, draws the ball, although he's neutralized his swing quite a bit in the last year.
Yeah.
But if you look at the others, you look at Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka, John Rahm, Justin Rose, those guys mostly fade the ball for most of their shots.
Yeah. Okay. And Chuck, I see you've got your clubs back there. Give us, I see a lot of head covers. Come on, just run us through those head cover clubs. What you got in the bag and why?
Well, because I'm 75 years old, I need head covers on my club. And so I've got driver 3-wood, 5-wood.
Okay.
4-iron, 5-iron, or 4 hybrid, 5 hybrid. And I used the 5 hybrid. I had then 5-iron through pitching wedge, 54, 58, and putter. And the 5-iron for me goes 180, 185. So that's like my 5 hybrid goes like that. So it really plays like a 4-iron for me.
Okay.
But I can hit it a lot higher. And
which is nice.
Which is good when you don't have a lot of speed. So I've got about 96, 97 mile an hour driver speed. So I have to get all the help I can those longer shots into the green.
Chuck, I will say this: I've been blessed to play around the golf with you. We played with the boys at Payne a couple of years back, and if someone said to me, Andrew, at 75 years old, you can hit it like Chuck Cook hits it at 75, I would sign on the dotted line quickly. I would take that right now. Great speed, great player. What else you got, Chuck? You got any questions for me? I know I've got a few more for you.
Have you messed Terry's swing up yet? Is all I want to know.
So I've got to tell you this, okay? I've got to tell you. So when she started, she had tons of this, and her club face was very weak on the way down, okay? Always a good-looking golf swing, and so we spent some time just trying to work a little bit more that way. And the first round she played in Australia, we played at this great course called St. Andrews Beach. And it was just her and I, and there was a bunch of kangaroos, and we had a fabulous day. Well, Terry is going par, 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 bogey, par, bogey. I mean, she's off the charts, okay? Just,
wow.
You know, and she's playing like a champ. But here's someone she's never broken 94 before. That's a low score, okay? So we come to the final hole, and it's kind of a tough driving hole, and she just laces this driver straight down the pipe. Okay, she drives it like a champ. And she gets up, and she's got a 9-iron into the last green, and she's like, what should I hit? I'm like, hit 9. She's like, oh, I hate my 9. Okay, and you've heard that before. I hate this club. Okay, so she thins it. She hits this low kind of right, and it scampers over the green into the back bunker. And it's a chop and a chop, and eventually she gets it out and she makes a triple. Okay, so she comes up to me and she's crying. Okay, she doesn't know what she's scoring. There's tears in her eyes. I can tell she's holding it back. And as we walked up the green, we were using Arcos. I pulled out Arcos, and we added it up, and she had shot 89.
All right.
Yeah, she broke 90 for the first time, which was really cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah, she was pumped. I must say, straight after this phone call, we're headed out. We're going to go and play. And she just loves the game. She's grown so much as a golfer, and she really is coming along. In Australia, she started to get too much of this, and she started to get a little hooky. And I think that's a good message for people to know. You know, it's not all about getting this, and it's not all about wrist angles and shallowing. Terry's better off with just a little bit of that. If she gets that way, she gets hooky, and when she gets hooky, her ball doesn't get up in the air, and she needs to get the ball in the air. You know, one thing I just want to say, Chuck, that you kind of alluded to earlier is as when you get to 75, okay, as you get older and that club speed starts to wane, I teach a lot of golfers who are older and don't have the club speed that they used to have. A lot of them think they do, but they don't. Okay. I see players still trying to get the handle forward. I see players still trying to hit down on the golf ball. I see players still trying to take divots. And really, one thing I would like to get across to everybody out there, whether you're a coach or a young or an old golfer, it doesn't really matter, is as speed goes down, so attack angles should go less down, and so shaft lean should become less pronounced. Would you agree with that?
Up to a point.
Tell me what you don't agree with.
Well, I still think that a ball that's compressed is going to have better qualities. The ball flight will have better qualities than one that's not, than one that's scooped off the ground. But I would agree with you, and you see I see that in the difference between PGA and LPGA players. You know, the girls I work with at Kristen Gilman and then Caitlin Papp, who's top 5 amateur player in the country, they have a lot less shaft lean than does a tour player, and so I think, no question. But their hands are in front of the ball, and
yes, and I'm not saying that
they are hitting down on the ball. They are not sweeping it off the ground or scooping it off the ground.
Correct, but you can say less down.
Less down, for sure.
Less down, less forward. Yes.
No question.
Good,
No.
good. Thank you for clarifying that, certainly. Chuck, another question that we've had from some of the people who are watching in. What technology do you teach with?
You know, my generation sort of pioneered the use of technology. I always tell the story of 1980. We had a biomechanical engineer, Ralph Mann, at our academy. We had Dave Pels teaching short game. We had Al Vermeil teaching fitness, and we had Dick Coop teaching psychology. And so at the time, we were doing graph check cameras. So that was where we would print out a Polaroid picture, sequence picture your swing, and draw lines on it. And that was the first.
Very cool.
On and on. And so then, and I was the first teacher to use a launch monitor for teaching. That was an old Achiever launch monitor, which did all his figuring out on the algorithms. And we had no idea what the numbers were supposed to be.
Yeah.
We'd say, well, Tom Kite launches at 616 degrees, so that must be good. And you're watching 23, so that may not be good. So that was sort of the trial and error. So right now, I currently use TrackMan and FlightScope. I use K-Vest. I use SAM. I use Swing Catalyst. I don't know. I
use it all.
I use it all.
That's awesome. And you know, just for everybody to note, Chuck is a well-experienced, well-seasoned golf coach. He's been around a long time. He knows a lot of stuff. And the thing that I love, and I'm sure some of you saw this, is this is Chuck's first go on Instagram, but we had a couple of practice live goes before we did this. And the beauty about Chuck, because there's a lot of 75-year-old coaches out there who are closed off, and they're still teaching today the same way that they were teaching 50 years ago or 40 years ago. And to me, Chuck, the beauty of what you do, amongst so many other things, is you have that openness to be able to go, look, I know about teaching, but I don't know about this Instagram thing. I know about teaching, but I don't know about K-Vest. Can you teach me, and can that help me? Can that help me help my students? And I love that open-mindedness to still be able to learn, I think is so, so cool.
Well, yeah, I enjoy it. I mean, I think that's the thing, is you got to have a curiosity. So I look at all of the different things that come out and try to look for what they can add or not add. But to say, a lot of the stuff that that I started using, I really found that I didn't have to change what I was teaching. It just confirmed what I was teaching, which would make sense if we were having success. And so it wasn't like, oh, okay, all of a sudden I've got to change everything I teach because of the fact that this says this or this says that, where it really didn't say that. So it's interesting to go through that. You know, didn't make me feel like I had to change. I may emphasize some different things more than I used to, but not really. You know, TrackMan loves the things that I teach. You know, it loves speed, compression, path.
Yeah.
You know, it loves that stuff. So I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I had somebody in a golf school about 2 weeks ago when I was still teaching, and they said, Andrew, you know, you don't really seem to have much of a method. I said, here's the deal. I said, I've got to get your club to communicate to the golf ball in a language that the golf ball understands. And I said, whatever I need to do to make that happen, and if I can use technology, I use most of the technology that you use. I'm a TrackMan, K-Motion, Swing Catalyst. I've used all of that and currently use most of that technology in my teaching. And I find, just like you, it supports what I teach, but it's also opened my eyes. It's definitely made me a better teacher. It has given me permission. It has supported that information and made me go, wow, this is correct. Look at that. let's keep going with that.
Yeah, it's great feedback for the student.
I think so. Another quick question: TrackMan versus Flight Scope, from Pete, PGA Pro. Here's the deal, okay, Chuck, and it's interesting that you've got both, okay? Do you have Flight Scope or Foresight?
I have Flight Scope.
Yeah.
I don't use Foresight. I've looked into it, and I know it does some things that TrackMan and Flight Scope don't do, but it's a lot more tedious to use with putting the marks on it and stuff like that. And so I don't think it gives me enough more for me to want to change from what I'm doing currently.
Yeah, and I think a message that I'd like to share for all teachers looking at that kind of technology is as follows. Whomever you talk to is going to vote in favor of what they have. So if you ask me the difference between TrackMan and Flight Scope, and I have TrackMan, you know what I'm going to say? TrackMan's way better.
Well, I don't know that I'd say one's necessarily better. I just think it's important to have one. And
I would agree.
You have to understand the differences. If you're using Flight Scope and you're using TrackMan modeling, then you're going to, have some issues there for sure.
Yeah.
So you just have to understand how they work and what they're measuring and so on and so forth. But I think it's important to have a way to measure for sure.
I agree. I like the way you said that. It's not a big deal what technology you have. It's just that you have something that's helping you out as a coach. And that question was from Pete Roach. So thank you, Pete. Chuck, I've got another one for you. We've had a request because you are the maestro of all storytelling. Okay, and so we're looking for your favorite, your best Payne Stewart story. Hello, Coach Lockie. Your best Payne Stewart story. What you got?
Well, let's see. Let me think of some I can tell. So anyway, we were over at British Open in Troon one time. We were playing Troon, and we were there the week before the British Open was going to be at Birkdale. And so we were traveling around Scotland, Dick Coop and Mike Hicks, Payne's caddy, and myself and Payne. And so we would play golf courses and then spend the night and then travel to another golf course in Scotland and do that. And so we decided to go out one night, and Dick Coop didn't go with us. He stayed in the hotel. And so this was over in Scotland. They have those big keys with the big fob on them,
Yes.
So what you're supposed to do with those is leave them at the front desk when you go. But stupid Americans, we put them in our pocket. So we had our keys in our pocket. And so we went out and did karaoke and had a little too much to drink. And we came back, and because our keys were not with the front desk, they thought we were already in our room. And so they had locked the hotel. So it was locked out. And so we were trying to find some way to get inside. And so we looked, and I said, okay, I got it. So I climbed this drain pipe up to the 4 stories. I could see that our window in our room was open. And so I climbed up in there. I had on penny loafers. My feet are slipping all over those slate roofs. And I swung in off the gutter, just swung right into the room with Dick Coop, and he almost crapped his pants, wondering who was coming in like that. And so we went in and did that. The same trip, Payne was, our first night, we were in Glasgow, and we were at a restaurant, and all of these kids noticed Payne. And so they all come over and go, can I have your autograph, this, that, and the other, and so on and so forth. They were college kids studying in Scotland. And so we decided, okay, we're going to go to some club or pub. And so we start walking. All these kids are following Payne. So here's 50 kids following Payne. We're on the other side of the street just watching it. And so we called him the Pied Piper for the rest of the trip. And I was known as Spider-Man for crawling up the crawling up the gas pipe. And then Mike Hicks would go to the bar with us, and then he'd go disappear. We never know where he was going when he would disappear. He'd go disappear, and then he'd come back and call it. So we called him Homing Pigeon. So everybody had a nickname, and Coop's nickname was Grandpa. So
Grandpa, because he went to bed.
Because he went to bed. So that was sort of the way life with Payne Stewart was like. He wanted everybody to have a good time, and he had a good time. So it was fun.
That's awesome. And Chuck, okay, one more question, and then we're going to let you go. Thanks so much for sharing. This is very cool. If you had one golf course that you could play, and you could only play this one golf course for the rest of your days, what would it be?
Oh, without question, Cypress Point. I mean, that's the most amazing golf. It's in Carmel. It's the first 6 holes, just like you're playing in upstate Michigan. You're going through pine trees and, I mean, evergreen trees, and it's up and down hills. And then you get to go around 7 and 8 and all the way through 14, and it's like you're playing in Scotland. You're playing in amongst the dunes, and you have that type. And then the last 15, 16, 17, you're playing on the cliffs out there. And so it's a totally different experience. And then 18 brings you back to the clubhouse. So that's by far my most favorite golf course to play.
Very cool. Very cool. Cool story. Hey, Chuck, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you extending yourself and jumping on Instagram for us to just learn a little bit from you. You are a true gem, not only to the golf instruction community, but also as a human being. Thank you so much. Chuck, if you were to offer some words of encouragement to everybody as we're going through this, and you know, unprecedented in our lifetime, we haven't seen this kind of thing, we don't know how to deal with it, what would you say?
Yeah, just do what they say. Let's get this thing over and done with. Shelter in place, you know, keep 6 feet away from everybody. Let's don't spread this thing any more than it already is. The odds of catching it are not very great, but the penalty for catching it is really great. And so just don't take any chances. It shouldn't be a long-lived thing. We hope not, at least anyway. So make the best of it. You got time with your family. You got time to do these projects like I was talking about, and just make the best of this time.
Chuck, much like your coaching, straightforward, sound, simple advice. Follow the fundamentals and everything will be good. Thanks so much, Chuck. Thanks so much. You're the best, man. I appreciate it.
How do you turn the Instagram thing off?
I don't know. If you just stop pushing buttons, you'll figure it out.